Ladies and gentlemen, Season 1, Episode 19, The Quest for Varian. An episode which Varian is not in. So she has a dream. Cool. And then we get a bot! Like, just instantly, just like that. Boom. So, we get a dream. There's a lantern with a message. Okay. There's a storm. Her father is stuck in thorns. Okay. She sees Kieran stuck in amber. And she sees Varian who's like, nah, you promised. Okay, cool. The most significant thing about this dream to me is the fact that she sees Kieran in amber. Why? Because she hasn't yet. That's the important part. There's the realm of debatability when it comes to these kind of visions, unless the character sees something that we know is true that they don't know is true. That's what this accomplishes here. So now we know that this is not just her having dreams while magic is happening, whatever. These are actual visions to some extent or another. Cool. We also see that her hair is getting a little bit more out of control. So that's cool too. This then cuts to her question. Has anyone been to Old Corona lately? And everyone's like, no, of course not. And the advisor says a line that made me want to smack him. He says, Princess Varian is dangerous. He attacked you during the storm. I don't know if he's an idiot or if that's very selective memory. But, you know. Anyways, so they cut to the king who's like, all right, look. Sigh. I will go ahead and I will tell you the truth. So he takes her over to the side and lies through his teeth to her. What's actually funny is while he was talking about how they've been slowly getting out to remove the thorns and trying to keep things on the download to remove a panic, I had a whole paragraph I was in the middle of typing up for my notes. Until he got about halfway through, he says, again, we found a way to remove the thorns. And we've been doing so one by one. And as he was doing that, I just stopped dead and taking my notes. And I was like, oh, he's lying. Of course he's lying. So what's he actually up to? Well, honestly, I'm still not 100% sure what he's actually up to. Other than being an idiot. But whatever. Moving on. Like, I'm sorry. I'm not a big fan of lying in general, but obviously there are times in which you do not want to share the truth, and that's true. I mean, this very show has had that Aesop in it before. But there's a catch there, because if you're going to tell someone a lie, especially a blatant lie, that they have a way to demonstrably disprove, all you have done is successfully added to the reduction of your trust in them, or sorry, their trust in you. Like, all you're doing is painting over a little bit of spackle on the wall that desperately needs actual reinforcement. I know that's a terrible analogy, but I stand by it completely. Anyways. What are you doing, dude? She could literally wander outside of town and see, aha! There's the rocks. Oh, he was lying. Like, this is... Dead Rising, Legend of Spyro, and the Thief block, because obviously we're not taking future stream donations at the moment. Thank you, Mr. Red, very, very much for your support, as always. Oh my god, what is wrong with this dude? Yes, I get it, he's overprotective. And as usual, he's a bad dad. Do me a favor, put a pin in that. Remember somewhere in the back of your mind how terrible of a father he is, okay? Do me that favor. So, they start to see how bad the rocks have gotten as they're heading out. And they see that there's this thing called a graphite that they need to find. Whatever that is. Okay, so they're on a quest to find graphite from Varian's lab, which Varian needs from Varian's lab. Why doesn't he just go get it himself? Nah, actually, I have an answer for that, but we'll get to that in a minute. So, oh gosh. Ugh. So they see how bad the rocks have gotten. They go out, and it's okay. We need to find a path through these rocks. We need a bird's eye view. So they call in the bird to go fly about 3 feet off the ground, you know, right, or maybe about head height, give or take, like 6 feet, you know, something like this. Because that's not what it. So when you say a bird's eye view, what you mean is, okay, moving on. there's this line they say where they mention, we know what happens when you touch one of those. Do we? Like, obviously avoiding them is cool, and we do know that there was a growth thing, but, like, do we really know what happens when she touches one of those? Meanwhile, Darth Vader's chasing them. I mean, it's Disney. That makes perfect sense. Cassandra also has violet hair. Her image is now complete. And then Eugene has violet hair. His image is complete. And so finally, Rapunzel has finally followed through on Varian and seen the father in Amber. I do like how she actually freaks out about it for just a second. It's a nice moment. I also especially like how Eugene comforts her, specifically how he comforts her. Things are worse than we thought. People are currently in danger, and you're not the one to avoid helping people. Bam, bam, bam. He is, in total contrast to her father, brutally honest with her here. And it is exactly what kicks her out of this. And then we see Darth Vader show back up. Give me the graphite. And that's the voice actor for the Royal Guard captain. Now that doesn't surprise me. You got to reuse voice actors in a show like this. But it's funny that he wasn't even trying to do a different voice for his character there. Anyways, moving on. So there's a big fight scene, alchemy, yada yada. They have a scene where Rapunzel seems to actually see what the note is. And we, of course, don't. So whatever's on that note's got to be something really great and awesome. I'm just saying. Because they keep building up what the father was writing down. It's probably like the big secrets of his order. Because remember, he had that helmet with the unique symbol on it. It's like, oh my god, I am part of the great order of Dinka-Donka-Doo. Unfortunately, ever since the thorns have grown, they've Dinka-Donka-Don't. And we must find the golden banana to... You get the overall point. Obviously, there's got to be something significant on this note, right? And they're definitely going to follow through on it, right? Right? Okay, cool. Writer's trust. We got it. It's going to be cool. So Max has their back, which is one of the most literal takes of the cavalry moment I've seen in recent memory. But you know what? I'm okay with it. I'm here for it. Rocks have started hitting the tower. Okay. And so we find out, all of the Darth Vaders, the gray helmets, I don't know. They all show up. And it's like, oh crap, they're climbing up the tower. What do we do? There's only one thing to do. So she goes ahead and lets down her hair, which is treated as a big, awesome moment, and yet afterwards she seems completely shocked by it. Now, I've been liking this episode for the most part. There's been a couple of tidbits here which are like, eh. But for the most part, this is good stuff. This is probably one of the weirdest sequences in the entire episode. Because she treats it as if I'm going to start taking this seriously. And then she very specifically lowers her hair onto one of the spikes, which then causes an explosion. And then she acts shocked by that, and Eugene even flat out says, what were you expecting the rocks to do? And of course then they start growing after her, which she also wasn't ready for. That doesn't work. It's the equivalent of someone being like, alright, it's time to be a total badass. And then, like, shooting some random part of the wall, which causes a reflect, which completely defeats all the enemies, and being like, whoops, I didn't do that on purpose. And then, like, it starts collapsing. It doesn't work. It's totally dissonant. You can't suddenly be like, oh, I'm going to take this seriously, and then guess. Like, I thought there was going to be a big action sequence with her hair, but instead she just causes the explosion. Oh, speaking of which... Then the rocks start growing up the tower. Now, this is not a complaint, but it does kind of change the nature of what these things are. They keep calling them rocks. Yeah, time to guess it seriously. Thing is, rocks usually come out of the ground, but now rocks are coming out of the tower. In fact, later on in this very escape sequence, they start coming out of the roof, which is very, very thin. Why is this all relevant? The general idea so far has been the rocks are probably just grabbing the matter from the ground and using that to create said rocks, right? This also explains why they're slowly growing further back towards the source of the problem. That's why there's giant, massive canyons of rocks over there and just a few spikes closer to the city. Make sense? So all of that tracks, but now they're growing out of things that don't have the matter to support it, which means the matter's coming from absolutely nothing. And again, that's not a complaint, but it means that these things are formally and officially just straight up magic. As in, literally magic. That's probably codified physical magic, as opposed to, Jesus Christ, as opposed to being, just recombobulated matter. Which is its own thing. and is actually, it changes the nature of it. It changes the nature of what we're looking at. This is all what I would be saying if I had a high writer factor, which I don't. But I'm going to keep thinking about these things as we go, and we'll see. We'll see. Yeah, what is the criteria for it to stop growing? That's actually a really good question. Either way, they get off the tower, and she uses the hair shield again. Second time she's used the hair shield. So that's nice that she's kind of figured out how to use the hair shield. Nice usage of it as a way to get down from the tower. Very, very expensive. Someone spent a couple of afternoons doing it. Animation of the tower being knocked down. That they did a lot of time and effort to really showcase how the tower crumbled. That was powerful. It was impacting. It was well animated. And Rapunzel was in tears the entire time. Which is interesting. I'm going to admit that I don't sympathize with that personally, because that makes no sense to me. This is her prison, and a place that, honestly, earlier on she had trouble even dealing with. Because, because it was her prison. It was the place she was abused for the overwhelming majority of her life. Nevertheless, it obviously means something to her, which, okay, sure, I'm going to accept that. And it's fascinating the way they do this, because this is a bit of a status quo change. Not the one I was looking for, but one nonetheless. And that's good. Changing status quo, good. So, I'm with it. Which, of course, reveals that, oh, it actually was the captain of the guard. Go figure. I guess he didn't have a voice modulator under there? So who ordered you? It was your father. Yeah. But one thing I like, and it's a little touch high-act, is that immediately upon hearing that it was her father, we had to keep the scroll away from you no matter the cost. She immediately goes and grabs the scroll and goes right down to watching it, or reading it. Like, I'm going to read this scroll right now as a pure act of just screw you rebellion. It was a nice moment. It got a smile out of me. So she looks at it, and we see some interesting stuff there, because we see that there's some energy from the sun going down to the sun drop, and there's some other energy going down to something that's on the torn off part of the scroll, to be continued. Because the episode just kind of ends right there.1 year. Sorry, I forgot to mention that earlier. They mentioned that it's her birthday, which means it has now been 1 year since the events of the film. So we actually have a time marker there. So obviously we have to rate this. But before we do, I've been thinking about structure. There are 2 episodes left in season 1. And if Varian is actually going to be going down the villain path, which is what they seem to be indicating at the moment, they're not giving him a lot of time to be a villain, are they? Like, he was like, I will do whatever it takes. That was back in episode 16. And then he was like, oh, what's this thing? That was in the previous episode, not in the mood. And now we have this episode, which he's not in at all. That leaves us 2 episodes for him to be a villain. So, structurally speaking, the most likely thing that would happen there is he would reveal his villainous self, be defeated in his current scheme, whatever it is, and then flee. And then season 2 will be dealing with him as a villain. That would make a degree of sense, right? Like that, there's a logic to that. Maybe he took the potion, and maybe he found out why it works. Maybe he's got something else going on. Like, there's all kinds of ways that this could work for him being the villain throughout the course of season 2. However, they could also completely pull the rug out from under me and actually have him be reformed here in season 1, and have them successfully reach out to him. The problem is that leaves us without a season 1 primary villain. Lady Kane's already out. And the Baron, while they've done a lot of build-up, has nothing to do with the stones. So that just leaves one possible antagonist for the end of Season 1. King Frederick. Oh, I didn't say villain. I used my word choice there very specifically. Because I actually think this could work out really, really well if Rapunzel does successfully reach out to Varian They find out what's going on. King Frederick is so desperate to keep things under wraps, and then it's now Rapunzel and Varian versus King Frederick. And that would lead us to season 2, which could be a massive status quo change. In other words, they effectively have to flee the kingdom because now King Frederick is so adamant about whatever's going on with these stones that it's literally no longer safe to stay there. So now they're outside the walls. And I have to admit, I'm cheating a little bit here because the first episode of season 1 is called Beyond the Corona Walls. Now, I could see this working out really well. Do we think it will? I have to admit, I'm not sure. There's a lot of question markiness about all of this. But the problem is, if Varian really is the season 1 villain, then why does he only get 2 episodes to himself? That's just not enough time. That's just not enough time to really develop and flesh out and make an interesting villain. Or antagonist, for that matter. Either way, let's go ahead and check this specific episode. Quest for Varian. Yeah, we need more shorty cameos. Oh yeah, by the way, just to speak it from a financial perspective, if they leave the walls, they can go to other play sets. Excuse me, toy opportunities. Merchandising. It's a decent episode. I have to admit, I'm kind of leaning towards what we'll usually call a high yellow, right? Like, I could see this working. And it's certainly, like, set up, right? But they've also, there's a couple of here and there, and there's just not a huge amount of meat on its bones. It's almost entirely just, let's go, let's go, let's go, let's set up, let's set up, let's set up. And that's fine. But I don't have much to add to that. Now, I actually wanted to talk about exactly what Bionic Punk was just talking about. Because if Season 2 actually started tying into Frozen, that would actually make a weirdly large amount of sense. For those of you not aware, Frozen and Tangled actually are connected. It's really, really, really vague, to the point where it's actually kind of pathetic and barely counts. But it does mean that both kingdoms exist at the same time in the same world as each other. That is officially confirmed by Disney, and they're the ones who decide what is canon. And the creators of Frozen have flat out stated that that was always their intent, is to have that connection point there. Yeah, Rapunzel and Eugene went to Elsa's coronation, you know? Now, that's mostly the realm of cameo, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with a good cameo. But it would be interesting if they decided to develop that. Because from a financial perspective, this drastically opens up the viewer base for this show and gives more merchandising opportunities, because all of a sudden there's all these Frozen toys they'll be able to sell alongside all the Tangled toys, right? The ability to have, you know, Frozen costumed Rapunzel and Eugene, right? Or, you know, Elsa and Anna come down to Corona and they have like summer attire thing. And I know that's dumb, but that's the kind of thing that makes money. That's the kind of thing that's exactly what MLP did, and it's exactly how MLP made so much freaking money in their merchandising. That's the financial side of things, which is important because then it actually backs the actual creative side of things, because there's a lot of stuff you can do creatively with that. Aside from the obvious fact of just, hey, continuity, cool, they could play with how, you know, different Anna versus Rapunzel is, because I feel like the two would actually probably hit it off pretty well, considering they both have a degree of shared childhood trauma. Almost the inverse of each other, actually. Anna had a huge castle but was completely shut in and locked away from family completely. Whereas Rapunzel was shut up in that stupid tower and almost entirely left alone, and the only real connection she had was with her mother. And you get it, right? Like, there's some directions there that both of them could actually tie into each other, and we could have character stuff. None of this is happening, of course. None of this happened, I should say past tense at this point. But it is interesting to speculate on the possibility. Because, yeah, we could, if this could be a test bed right? This could have been a, does this idea work, both financially and creatively, kind of a thing. And then maybe trying to tie in other IPs in ways that make sense in order to try and expand the more or less literal world of the princess verse. I hate to call it that, but you get the idea, right? And you cannot tell me that it wouldn't help boost the ratings of this show, which desperately needed it because of the sabotage that was happening, if they brought Frozen in. Like it or not, Frozen was a advertising juggernaut. Frozen was everywhere. And so bringing Frozen in would kind of been like bringing Worf into Deep Space Nine. And I know you hate that, Ross, but the truth is that was a really big shot in the arm for Deep Space Nine. And completely increased the amount of viewers that were coming to DS9 hugely back in the day. It was pretty much the only bump in DS9's viewership in its entire run. And yeah, it would justify all these marketing ploys they keep doing this. You get it. So the idea of a princess verse is admittedly fascinating, and it's got me thinking now about directions they could take this. And none of this is true, right? None of this is true. There will be no Frozen in this show. I almost guarantee it right now. And they never thought about it, and they're dumb and they're stupid. I'm sorry, just one last thing. The last reason this would be interesting, one of the biggest complaints... Yeah, exactly, Lord Hammond. I wasn't even going to bring up that. One of the biggest complaints that people tend to have for too much continuity is you have to watch/play/read too many things to get the full story. If you have, first of all, if you have a good front end, but if you have all of those works all in one single space, so you subscribe to Disney Plus and you get access to the entire Princess verse. You get it? It's worth noting, they already do this. If you pull up Disney Plus, which I've got right there, there's literally an MCU section, right? And a way to just see all the MCU stuff, shows and movies, all in one bundle. Now, again, their front end is terrible and needs to be better organized, and they actually need to have some good interface design, but whatever. The point being, with a little bit of polishing, a little bit better programming and design, this could be a whole thing and just kind of be a step over, essentially removing part of the barrier to entry for these kind of long-term continuities. Again, one of the biggest complaints about long-term continuity, which goes all the way back to frickin' the 60s. But what the hell do I know? Next episode we're covering is Season 1, Episode 20, The Alchemist Returns. So we already haven't had Varian. What do you want to bet we're going to actually have Varian in this? Like, is it? I'm getting like 50%. I'd say 50% chance we'll actually have Varian in the next episode.